Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of positive, seeing good growth, which is important. I think we're in the midst of it, as every other team is, and there's a fine line between feeling really good about yourself and not feeling so good about yourself, and I think we just have to kind of stay in the work. I've kind of looked at us as on a positive side, a work in progress, where I'm really encouraged by both the work and the progress. I think that we're making strides, and so, we just have to continue to do it.
You guys have said Jason's only going to be back once he's 100%. What is that threshold? What's it going to take, the milestones from the get-go?
There's strength thresholds he has to meet, and then after that, several weeks of progressions, right, from the standpoints of, scripted against small groups, scripted against bigger groups, scripted in 5-on-5, unscripted, random, all the way up through those. But it's a long progression, and it's almost like once you hit the strength, then you do your thresholds of a progression of play, and then you're also reconditioning to play real minutes, whatever that looks like. It's, he's obviously made great strides. Right now, we're still focused on the full strength game.
Where's he at right now in terms of that progress, and what do you think the likelihood is that he will play this year?
We're not putting a timeline on it, as we haven't the whole time. I mean, I think that, one of the things that everybody can see is we didn't apply for a DPE this year, which was, a conscious decision for a lot of reasons. But the reality is he's not going to be back until he's 110% healthy, and he feels good about it. And that's a big part of it, right? Obviously, he's itching to play. Obviously, he hates watching. But he's also, I don't want to speak for him, but very cognizant of the need to meet every threshold and why there are those things that are put in place. But we've had a lot of great talks about it. And, one of the things that we love about this whole group, but I think the guys that have been here the longest lead the charge, is they love to play.
What's your assessment of how Jalen's performed so far in that quote-unquote number one role?
Yeah, I mean, he's been great. I think one of the things that I'm most encouraged about our team is, we went through a summer, and you're kind of retooling, and you're going to be retooling, and you don't know how long that's going to take. And your older guys that have kind of been through it, that have only been parts of really good teams for the most part, I'm so impressed with not only the attack and how they're playing, and Jaylen specifically, but also just the mindset, the patience with helping grow younger people. I think that all of our young wings have shown that they're capable of something, right? And I think that's largely due to the fact that we have all of these older guys that are really, even some of the guys that aren't playing as much right now, like Xavier and Chris and Luka, that are giving them that environment. And I think it starts with Jaylen. I think it starts with Derek, Peyton, obviously, those guys that have been there, because it's not easy, when you necessarily go through the changes we went through and the talent that's lost, to have that kind of patience, to start out 0-3 and to just keep focused on getting better, I thought was a really good sign.
Do you see specific needs at this point? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I mean, we need to get better. I think some of that's internal, and I think some of it's external, but, we'll see how that all goes.
How's the way you're playing and kind of the landscape of the NBA and other teams, how's it affecting, if at all, your approach with the trade down getting a little closer, maybe making changes?
I think the whole league, from everything, especially as you start to talk about those things with other teams, as you go to all the college tournaments that were a couple weeks ago, and then now the fact that a lot of the league can be traded, right? I think everybody, or a lot of teams, are really still very much in, let's see how everything looks and as time moves on, right? I think, everybody's a work in progress. There's what's the difference between third and ninth in the East right now. There's hardly anything, right? And I think that we're all still trying to figure out who we are and what we can be. We will not put a ceiling on this group. If it makes sense for us to look for things that can help us, we certainly will. But it all has to be within good deals, and it all has to be within the the ultimate goal, which is the North Star of retooling so we're in a position to compete for what we want to compete for.
How have you seen this landscape now as we get deeper into this apron era? It seems like multi-team trades are more common than they were in the past. Does that have to be because of the salary situation, right?
Yeah.
How much more difficult does that make things, or does that make it easier because there are more options?
I think there is definitely an increased awareness every day about the aprons, the effect of the aprons, and the trade restrictions that are a part of that. And so yes, it becomes much more difficult just to do a 1-for-1, and it's always been difficult when you start including third, fourth, fifth teams, right? Like so, I think that's a real thing, and it's probably why maybe there will be a deal or two that are early. Who knows? But across the league, but it would also not surprise me if it takes a while.
What's your picture for Jordan when you first drafted him? Is this kind of the role you envisioned him eventually playing? And a lot of people have a short term, like they want to see that progress in year 1, year 2. But did you always kind of think it was going to be a multi-year project with him?
I knew he had no prayer on the first team. First team was really good. And last year's team was basically the first team. And so it was going to be hard to crack that one too. When he got here, he was young. I mean, these guys are like him and Hugo and Josh, and these guys are young. I mean, I go to college games almost every weekend, and I'm watching prospects that are the same age or older some of the time. So you have to give them the grace of time. And then also, sometimes you're not going to get the opportunity that they get. And I think that's why you see such a desire to take advantage of it. And that comes with a burden you put on yourself, and that ends up creating more ups and downs generally. But I think that those guys have all done a really good job, and Jordan specifically, he's got a role, and I think Joe and his staff have done an excellent job of defining what those guys need to do to be good. And sometimes it takes steps. You start to see Jordan now occasionally more driving closeouts and dumping it to Nene for a dunk, or dumping it to somebody else off of a roll, or kicking it out off of a roll. Your role expands when you show that you can consistently be good in the simplest of things. And I say simplest, it's hard to play that hard, and especially against the guys he's guarding, but he's doing a good job.
How has the organization refined the development, process? Just had so many success stories, from Luke to Sam Hauser and now Jordan.
Yeah, I think, I think the coaches are doing a really good job, both here and in Maine. I think they've been doing that for a long time. And I think the intentions have always been to be the best that we can possibly be at creating an environment for growth for however long guys are here. And I think that there's two reasons for that. Number one is because it helps you, and number two is regardless if you're here for a year or 10 years or 20 years, you want to feel invested in. And so I think we can always get better. But I give a lot of credit to the players' work ethics, the coaches, and all of the people in the organization that are putting time and thought into developmental plans and sticking to them, regardless of whether Jordan plays a minute in the first 2 years or not.
Brad, you got a bunch of guys out here that have worked really hard, climbed to a higher level than you thought. What's
and
the
who thought?
Then people, quote unquote, people thought.
Right. We haven't put a ceiling on any of them.
Understood. But there is a feeling of hey, this team might have something to go for now. What's the balance between, you mentioned before, that North Star? What's the balance between kind of rewarding these guys and kind of going for it here versus maybe making a more long-term type of.
If I feel like we can do something to reach those things and it makes sense with another team that's willing to do something, which is very complicated, then we always listen and we always look and we're always pursuing that. There's nothing holding us back necessarily from that, but at the same time, right, there's a lot of things that have to go right in the deal. One thing you can control is the people in the room getting better. And, you know, like I think it would have been easy for all of us to assume that Mimi would have a long way to go in this role, and he's just jumped in and grabbed it and been great, right? Like Jordan's getting to grow because of the opportunities there. So there's a balance with all of that, but the North Star is a North Star, and we'll keep it that way.
What made of Anthony's season here so far, and the spot he's in coming off the bench, all the different things there?
I think he's really trying, and I really have. First of all, he's a quiet guy, but just a super person, and so he's really come in with a great mindset of I'm going to help the team, you know, any way I can, and offensively he knows he's capable of going nuts on any given game, right? But then defensively, I've just been really impressed. Like, he's picked up, he's made it hard. I think he's made great strides in the months he's been here on that end, and I'm a big fan. I like him a lot.
You mentioned Nimi. Is it fair to say that he's exceeded your guys' internal expectations so far?
I mean, he was just so good when he got limited opportunity the last couple years. We were just were really lucky to have the depth we had at that spot, right? We just had, I mean, all you have to do is turn on the TV in meaningful games and you see a former Celtic playing. It feels like we had so much talent at particularly that big spot, and so but when he got his chances, he felt pretty good about it. But then there's a big difference between doing it occasionally and doing it every game, and now hitting a couple of 30-plus minute games, you know, back-to-backs, you know, all that stuff. It's a different level. And, you know, we've always been impressed by his character and his desire to be that, but I've been really impressed how he's handled it thus far.